we're good in kindergarten. Yeah. We have a good
Not
teacher.
really.
Oh, okay. We're missing our second speaker, but we're not going to hold the whole day up waiting. Probably stuck at the border. So I've talked to Pinky, and she's agreed to go ahead and start without him, and then when he comes, we'll manage. But I want to welcome all of you wonderful Democrats. There's a lot more of us here. I hope there are more than this room. Yes, there are. I know, there are a lot. But you know, our work is cut out for us, and we all have to keep on our toes.
Yes.
Because if we don't, it's going to not be good for any of us. So that's my little spiel. Before I introduce Pinky, though, I want to say thank you to Mark.
Yes.
Because Mark set this up while I was playing out of town. And so he really did the work, and I really want to thank you. Now, what we had planned to do is have each speaker speak for about 15 or 20 minutes and then have questions. So at this point, we're going to have Pinky speak, and then we'll see how it goes. And you can ask, if you want to ask questions, let them ask questions. You can do that to you, whatever it is. Okay? Great.
Well, hello everybody. Happy Friday. I know you could probably be doing a lot more fun things on a Friday afternoon, so I'm really happy to see this many people here. This is great. And people who are interested and engaged in the democratic process, because this is a pretty big election all the way around for us this year, and so it's really awesome to see people who care about what's going to happen and how we can change things. Again, my name is Pinky Vargas, and I'm running for the 42nd State Senate seat. The incumbent right now is Doug Erickson. And he has served in that seat for 8 years. And I will tell you that when we win as Democrats this year in the 42nd, it's going to be a big deal because we have not had a Democratic representative in the 42nd in a very long time. And since it was gerrymandered back in 2010, we've had absolutely no Democratic representation. So this is going to be a huge win for us this year. So thank you for being engaged, and thank you for caring about what happens in our in Whatcom County and in our state. Couple things, a little bit about me. I'm actually, I serve on Bellingham City Council right now. I'm in my second term, so I've served there 5 years. I've been president of council, I've been chair of finance, chair of economic development. Also, I serve on Parks and Rec, and I serve on the Mount Baker Theater. And this year, I'm also serving on Justice, on the Justice Committee. So these are things that I care about passionately, and ensuring that we have a strong economic vitality and that we're taking care of everybody. So while I've been on City Council, I've had opportunity to do things that work all the way through Whatcom County, which is one of the projects we're working on right now is called a wayfinding system that is actually going to tell people when they are in Blaine that Point Roberts is over there, and how you can get around, and that we are all connected. So I'm really excited. That should be happening within the next year. It's been great for me to be able to work on the city, but also be able to help and interconnect to the county. I also have worked on the justice system and our criminal justice reform with Whatcom County and with all the small cities for many years, trying to figure out how we can reduce our population in our jail and how we can help people and keep them out of our incarceration system and do better with alternatives and diversions and things like mental health court and drug court and help with recidivism and keep people out of jail. So those are some projects that I've worked on throughout the county that have affected the entire county. I will say that a lot of my priorities while I've been on City Council have often had to do with environmental things. So I usually try to work on things like I led something called the Bellingham Energy Prize, which was a national competition. And it was for us to reduce energy, and I'll tell you, Bellingham came in 3rd in the nation. So that's pretty phenomenal for a little city like Bellingham. But the great thing about Whatcom County is we have people who really care about making a difference in carbon reduction and being good stewards of our planet. So I feel like we're very fortunate that we're surrounded by people who actually care about how we treat our planet and what our future is going to look like for all the little people coming behind us. So my day job is I work for Puget Sound Energy, and some of you may recognize me because I've been coming to Point Roberts for many years, working on things like changing out the light bulbs in the community center, and making sure that there was a generator, and working with the prep program. And so Point Roberts is like this special little place to me because it always feels like a little bit of vacation because I get to leave and come over here and go by the beach side. And so Point Roberts to me, I find it a really amazing community. There are lots of really interesting people who live in Point Roberts, so it's quite an interesting conclave here, and I like to come. So, PSC, I worked a lot on energy efficiency and outreach, and what I do is I help a lot of the business customers, and I help a lot of the community organizations, and I work with the hospitals and the school districts, and the ports and the counties and all the small cities and towns to make sure with energy efficiency and support them. So I do work all the way throughout Whatcom County currently, and I've worked throughout Whatcom County for the last 12 years. So I have a pretty good familiarization with the entire county. So even though I live in Bellingham, I'm very familiar with all of Whatcom County. A little bit about me personally. I will tell you that I was actually born in Canada. I'm a dual citizen, and I was born on and raised on a farm in northern Alberta. And it was the farm that my great-grandparents had homesteaded over about 100 years ago. And then my grandparents lived there, and my parents lived there. And until I was 10 years old, we did not have running water on our farm. So that gives you, it makes you a little bit tough when you're kids because you have to haul water to feed all the animals. You have to use an outhouse. You have to bring water in so that you can share water with a bath for all your siblings. And so just learning how to share water was a really great, and how valuable a resource water is, and how challenging it is for people who don't have access to water. So that's something that I grew up really appreciating, the value and the accessibility, just for an everyday thing for people to have running water. We grew up on a farm, so we grew all our own vegetables. We had cows, we had pigs. So I grew up on a working farm, and we grew wheat. It was a very large family. I have 56 first cousins. So I always kind of say that was my training ground for politics, because we do a lot of things as a family together, and there are a lot of opinions. So if you, for me, that always feels good to be able to have really good, strong, civil discussion with my family and my friends, and to hear lots of different opinions. And so that was a good place for me to see what it's like we don't always agree on everything. Even my partner, who I love dearly, maybe 80%, but so we never agree with anyone 100%, and we always have to learn the value of appreciating what other people's point of view is. So for me, that was a great training ground, and I think that's an important part of what I believe is missing in politics right now, is for us to not be just over here and over here. And I think out of the 3 candidates that are running, I feel like I'm more in the middle. I feel more moderate and centrist. I have very progressive values, but I'm fiscally responsible. I will always ask the questions of, is this going to improve people's lives, and how are we going to pay for it? So these are the kind of the things that I think about when I'm in elected office. So anyway, grew up in Canada, and what brought me to the US 22 years ago was I married a US Marine who was stationed at Whidbey Island. So I ended up moving to the US 22 years ago, and I am an American citizen. I'm a dual citizen, but I live in America, so. But a lot of my family is still here. I've got a brother in Vancouver as well, so locally. And I've lived in different places throughout the U.S. We were transferred after Woodby to San Diego, to MRCB there, and so that base. So we've had a fair amount of experience moving around, and also seeing what it's like to be a military wife and to support veterans. And through that experience, I also learned how much our veterans are not supported enough. And that's something that is really near and dear to me, because I feel like the veterans have stepped up and served our country and done things that most people are not able to do. So I think that our veterans, particularly when it comes to medical coverage right now, I think that we can do absolutely better when it comes to taking care of our veterans. So that's how I got to the US. And the reason, I'm just going to take just a moment if I may. It was really hot out there today, so we were kind of making our way out through Port Roberts, trying to visit as many people as we could. So why am I running? So a little bit about me, but why am I running? I will tell you that while I've been serving on Bellingham City Council, I've been kind of watching over the last couple of years what's been happening at the state level. And I do not believe that our current senator cares about the values of Whatcom County. I don't think he represents us. And I also don't think that he seems like he even wants the job. But I do. And I think that we have an opportunity for somebody to advocate for people all the way throughout Whatcom County. And that includes Point Roberts. And that's not just little small segments, that's everybody. We all deserve to have a voice at this table. And that's what's really important to me, and it kind of just feels like family. It's like, we don't always agree, but everybody has an opportunity and everybody should have a voice. I think that we need to focus on things that are common interest and come together on those things. And those are things that, like ensuring that everybody has affordable housing and that everybody has affordable and accessible health care. I absolutely believe that health coverage is a right, not a privilege. And I think we would all be way better off if we had affordable health care. So maybe that's because I was born in Canada, but I just believe that nobody should be losing their home because they can't afford to pay their medical bills. You shouldn't have to choose between paying for your medicine or paying for groceries. That's just crazy to me. So ensuring that everybody has affordable health care is a huge priority for me. Another one is education. And education for me is not just K through 12. I'm glad that the McCleary decision has funded some of our K through 12 programs. We are a long ways away from being fully funded, but I also think that we need to go beyond that. We need to make sure that colleges are affordable, that people have opportunity for apprenticeships and for training, and if they want to go to university, they should have that choice too. But we should be able to give people choices. If they want to learn a trade, if they want to go to university, they want to get a technical degree, that people should have an opportunity to choose whatever they want to, and figure out it shouldn't cost the whole family a bank loan in order for people to go to school. And kids shouldn't come out of school in so much debt that it takes them 20 years just to pay off their student loan. Those things don't jive to me. That's not a strong economy. So giving people opportunity right from the get-go with an affordable education, I think, is hugely important. I don't think that we should maybe I should rephrase that. I think that what we should focus on is our basic common needs and working together. A lot of times, particularly Point Roberts, because you are isolated in a way that you have to be so independent in your thinking and your resources and what you have to do. And I think that if we can work together more as a county, both with all the different small towns and cities, and with the counties and the port, and with our state legislature, to pool our funding and to share resources so that everybody gets equal access to things. And so I want us to work together a little bit more collaboratively to ensure that everybody has equal access to things. So I know there are a couple things that Point Roberts gets left out on, and I just heard that you might be losing some of your medical facilities. That is really frightening to me, that to be completely isolated and not have access to medical services, that is concerning to me. You look like you had a question. Did you have a question, Mark? Did you want to?
No, I have lots of questions.
Okay, well, all right. And you know what?
Finish your.
Yeah, sure. And you know, I don't have to talk too long. I would rather actually answer your questions. I find I learn a lot more than that. But I just wanted you to know that I have been thinking about this for about 2 years because I am not really happy with the job that Doug Erickson has done. I don't feel as though he listens to our entire population, and I feel like he doesn't really support. There are things this year that I thought were tragic. One of them was he voted against a bill called the Breakfast After the Bell. And what that does is it allows all of our children from K through grade 6 to make sure they get fed before they go to school. And he voted against that. I mean, to me, that is a completely nonpartisan issue. We all try and figure out how we can support our children and give them opportunity and make sure that they can do better. And I just don't feel as though he's representing our values, that he is more special interest. And I want to make sure that I'm accessible. I often hear all the time that he doesn't meet with people, he doesn't talk with people. And one of the things that I want to commit to you is that I will always be accessible. I will come to Point Roberts and visit, and when you come to Olympia, that my door will be open for you. And I want to make sure that you feel represented and that all the people in Whatcom County have a voice and have an opportunity for representation, and that we work together to solve issues like ensuring that you have opportunity for transportations, that you have opportunity for medical resources, and so I want to focus on our basic needs and help as much as I can in those areas. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just take questions because I usually learn more and then people tell me more what they're interested in. Why don't I start with that?
Okay, I have lots of questions, but I'll just do one at a time.
Okay.
But first of all, I want to say it's not true that Erickson doesn't talk to people. He's #1 for steak dinners with lobbyists.
Oh, yeah. Except for there's a free steak dinner.
If there's a free steak dinner while he's on per diem, doesn't matter. That's kind of double dipping. But okay, first of all, it's obviously interesting and different, at least this round. We have 2 Democrats seeking to replace the incumbent, and I think it's fair to predict that he's going to be one of the top 2 because of the
history.
The district. Lyndon's sitting out there with a lot of voters.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, whoever goes on to the final, we really have to support the candidate, whether it's you or Tim, because among many other things, we had Erickson up here for the taxpayers AGM last year. It was our keynote speaker. He's the incumbent. Well, it didn't go well because of various reasons, but he's entitled to meet his constituents. I'm glad we invited him. I'm sorry that he didn't get the most courteous reception. That wasn't right. But anyway, he was here. And among many other things, he's a climate change denier, and we have to get rid of him. We just have to get rid of him. So I appeal to anybody who has a strong preference for one candidate or the other to rally around the Democrat who runs in November.
You're here for that.
I actually have 2 questions.
Okay.
One is personal and the other is political. Which one do you want first?
You choose.
Okay. The first one is kind of double barrel.
Okay.
How many siblings?
So I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, but I have 56 first cousins.
Right.
So that's where
And what is it? What birthday?
I am the oldest.
You're the oldest.
I'm the oldest, yeah.
Think about what you do.
Yeah.
You mentioned gerrymandering.
Yeah.
What, if anything, is being done about that, or are you going to try to do it?
Yeah, so we are up for redistricting in 2020. So if I get elected, I will have an opportunity to give us fair lines in regards to how our districts are separated. So Doug had a very big hand in that in 2010. And so now if I'm elected, that is something that I care very deeply about, is ensuring that those districts are fair.
Thank you.
Could you please explain very briefly the powers and responsibilities of the state senate versus whatever the other chambers call House?
The House side.
Yeah.
Yep. So right now, currently in Olympia, we have 49 state senators. So 49 different districts. There are 49 of us, and currently, as of just last year, because of the winning of Moncadincracy, we had a majority, a Democratic majority, for the first time in 8 years, I believe. So a lot of things happened in our legislature last year because we had Democrats in control. So things actually went through. And then in our House side, we have double of that. So most of them have two representatives. So in the 42nd, we've got 2 House seats and we've got 1 Senate seat. The responsibilities are mostly the same in that the bills move through the same sort of process, whether in your House side or in the Senate side. But most bills have to, just like at the national level, they have to go through both processes. So there's usually a House bill for something and a Senate bill. Often a House will lead with a bill and then the Senate will review it later, but sometimes it still goes the other way, but mostly it's the House. And you are responsible for the state budgets. There are, I'm trying to remember how many committees there are. I think there are 12 or 13 committees. Just for reference sake, I will tell you that the committees that I'm interested in serving on when I get to the state Senate is that I want to serve on the agricultural committee for obvious reasons. I want to serve on economic development because I want to make sure that we're getting opportunity for jobs and that Whatcom County is getting some of that money. And then I also want to serve on energy and environment. I've worked for PSC for many years. I understand how the utilities work, and I want to make sure that we're focusing on things like renewable energy and conservation. So that's why I want to do energy and environment. And then I also want to serve on the Law and Justice Committee because I want to work on criminal justice reform. So those are the 4 committees. Did that answer your question, or way more than you even asked?
So bills can originate in either chamber.
Correct.
They have to get through both chambers. And does one of the chambers have any very differential powers aside from that?
Not specifically. It's more that there are less members in the Senate. They also have different term limits. So House representatives serve for 2 years. They're up every 2 years. Senate representatives are up every 4 years. So often people sometimes start in House seats and they move to the Senate. So sometimes, but you know, your powers are pretty equal. So they're almost the same. Longer term limits because there's less of them. So often maybe a senator might have a little bit more influence because they're the only representative from that area.
For quite some time, there's been a push on the Republicans' part to privatize education, and charter schools are a first step in that direction. How do you feel about charter schools versus public?
I think public schools were the foundation of this country. And I think that when you try and separate kids and give them different kinds of cake, it's just another form of segregation. And I believe that if you put everybody, whatever your people's income is, or religion, or culture, and you put everybody in public education, you get to learn from each other. You get to be with each other. It's more opportunity for upward mobility. Everyone gets the same education. So I kind of struggle with the whole charter school thing. I really believe in public education. And I also believe teachers should be paid. there yet.
Yeah, on gerrymandering, how, if the Democrats take over the Senate, how do you plan to draw lines fairly? Because it seems like the parties, budget both ways. How can you make them fair?
So you just made me realize that there is one difference in the Senate. I mean, there are differences, but
Repeat his question.
so this gentleman asked about the gerrymandering and how actually we can influence that when we get redistricted. The Senate doesn't. So that is a responsibility for the Senate side, which is why Doug Erickson had so much influence on it. And you get to influence on the lines being drawn in your area. So you have a very direct influence on how those districts are drawn.
Well, I would probably just take you right back to education, but this time to higher education.
Okay.
That I'm very concerned about. The University of Washington system is pretty extensive, but there's also a huge number of private universities that we rely on. How much influence does the state government, especially the legislative branch, have on hiring, paying? I'm a retired professor. I know when I left, I was very disturbed by the fact that we had a huge number, this was in Oregon actually, but we had a huge number of very highly paid administrators and underpaid, frequently working on separate contract, freeway flyer professors. And that, as much as the students' inability to get decent loans and scholarships, was really an issue. And do you have any insights you can offer on that?
Yeah, so you're right. It is pretty dicey. The salaries are for the administrative at the university. The state has no influence on it. Only on the actual educators and on the people who work there. So all the support staff. So those contracts do go through the state, but not the administration.
Now, is that just for state institutions or all universities?
So the state, but like Whatcom Community College has different unions that that control the different parts, the classified versus non, and so that. Those are not necessarily controlled by the state. They are controlled by the different union organizations that for each one they all have various segments there. So yeah, only the universities.
And the administrators are exempt somehow.
And the administrators are exempt as well.
Thank you, that explains a great deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw one. Yeah.
I have an environmental statement. As you know, we live in the most beautiful spot in the world. It's gorgeous, and we're very lucky. We're all getting most of our population. But my concern is the coal dust from Canada. And I have to power wash my house twice a year because I can't even see double screens. Is there a way that you can represent us internationally since you are a duo?
You know, that is, somebody asked me something the other day and I said, oh yeah, I'll just call up Pierre, no problem. You know? I wish we had that kind of influence. So the biggest challenge there is the railway. So the state actually does not have a lot of, hi Tim, this is Tim Ballew. Hi. The state does not actually have any control over that, which is tough in regards to the counties, the cities, the state negotiating with the railway. So they're the ones who control all of that. So it's really challenging. They're not the most fun to negotiate with, and they control all of the rights of that, and we have very little influence on it. It's really challenging.
There's real big black cloud.
Yeah, and you know, and just like, I mean, there's not much we can even do it in the city of Bellingham or in the county. as well. So that's a tough one because the railway controls what goes on their rails, when it goes through, everything. We have almost absolutely no influence whatsoever.
So the full, in which is it, Ferndale area, is that going to go through?
No, it is not. No, it is not, yeah.
I get Campbell side.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to Sally's question. I live on that side as well, and I also get a lot of coal dust on my yard, and my garden is a mess constantly. And they're aware of it, but also people that crab fish have caught crabs out front of my place in U.S. waters full of coal dust and black, and it's different than crabbing on other quicks. So I think there's an ocean problem as well that we should have some say in, and they are also aware that what would be a simple solve is if they can container the coal and put lids on the train. And could we not have an effect on that with it damaging our ocean and wildlife?
You know, I think that, I mean, there are people who would like that, like them to do that, very much so. There are people who advocate for that right now on the national level because, like I said, we just don't have that much influence with the railroad. And I don't know, actually Tim might even know the answer in regards to the county about whether we haven't been able to do anything with the rail cars. And so that's what, thank you, Carly. Like we have, I would say that much influence when it comes to our railroads and everything that's gone on them. So we advocated for it at the national level, but we have almost no influence. Yeah, so I know that, so Tim's here, so I thought that maybe we'll let Tim come up and have a chance, and then if you want to ask us both questions, we can do that, so you have an opportunity to listen to Tim as well, okay? All right.
Good. Tim, you want to come on up? This is Tim Ballew, and he's going to introduce himself.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tim Ballew, candidate for the 42nd State Senate race. And before I start off, my apologies for not being here at the 4 o'clock start time. We were at the border for nearly 90 minutes of the U.S. side.
We understand that.
So actually my family and I, Leanne, we actually met pulling canoe. We travel a canoe circuit. It's something that starts in Lummi on Mother's Day, and there's a different race in every community all the way through Labor Day. And this time of the year, we actually cross the border, go to Seabird Island, Cultus Lake, and there's a handful of races on the island. But I just did not expect it was going to be 90 minutes on this day, so my apologies. And also, it gives me a better understanding of what it is to live and work here in this community. Point Roberts holds a very special place in my heart, and also for Lummi. And I'll admit, I've been here many times, but it's usually been by boat and Lily Point. And only a few times have I been able to visit the uplands. And all those times, I've actually to drive to Lily Point, which was a main village site for the Slacktomish people, the Lummi people. It's referred to as Tustunum. And there was a major reef net site where the Lummi people had 13 main village sites, and one of them was here at Tustunum, and we would travel with the resource, with the Fraser River sockeye, and start and end the season here. And the first salmon ceremony, anyone who's ever got the chance to witness that, was actually here at Lily Point, recognizing and honoring the salmon, and in particular the Fraser River salmon. It is a staple that binds the community, and it's an iconic resource of our area, and I really think that it should be honored, valued, and protected. And I really think that a life-changing moment of mine was in 1997. The summer of 1997, was the last time that I remember that there was what was referred to as an extension in the Fraser River fishery, meaning that the fishery was opened for a set number of time, and then the regulatory administration, which is combined between 23 different sovereigns, the state, and 22 different fishing tribes, that filed an extension, so extra hours of fishing. That was the last time that happened in 1997. And at that time, we took a break from the tide, because usually at low water we're fishing, that's the best tide to fish salmon, and we're usually fishing. For whatever reason, we didn't fish that tide that day, and that there is actually a spot here with a petroglyph, and my uncle brought me to that, and it was a life-changing moment. And I think that those collections of moments in a person's life, and for me being a native fisherman, those moments are usually on the water or by the fire. And it's when you're able to go out, harvest, and bring whatever resource you have, and bringing it back to the family and sharing it. That has been so important. I really think that our policymakers should not be able to, but are tasked with making sure that culture that defines our community, and I'm including the Point Roberts community in that those continue on, that our policies should be set to make sure that the community values of the 42nd, Whatcom County, this entire area of the Pacific Northwest are able to continue on. It's very important. It's important to me, and I think that's what brought me to public service. And my first office of public service was being on the Ferndale School Board. My second office was being a council member for the Lummi Nation. I've served 2 terms there, 6 years total, and of those 6 years, 5 of them were as chairman for the tribe, chairman of the business council. And I had a set of things that I thought I was going to work on when I was elected and then elected to be chairman. And I learned really quick that the things I want to work on aren't always the things that you get to work on. So it was a quick lesson in public policy that you have to work on what's in front of you and the here and now. And at that time, I heard a couple comments of the coal ports, the existing one and the proposed one at Cherry Point. The Gateway Pacific Terminal at Cherry Point was the discussion and proposal of that was in front of the community in 2010, 11, 12 is when it was really starting to ramp up. There was a lot of discussion on whether or not the coal port would be approved. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with a team that stopped the coal port from coming to fruition and getting the federal permit denied from the Army Corps of Engineers at Cherry Point, which effectively killed the project. And actually, just so you know, I forget the concerns and comments about the coal dust from Tsawwassen, on the doorsteps and windows and water, were actually being prepared to be used as part of the comment and concerns of the environmental impacts that a new port would bring to the community. So in addition to that, our fishermen were able to get images and data of the dust that was on the water while they're fishing salmon just at the point over here. I think that experience of standing up to corporate interests to protect the environment, to protect the community is invaluable, and I was able to learn a lot about working with a team to standing up for a community goal to protect community values, and I'm committing to you to continuing that effort and that practice of standing up for the community as your state senator for the 42nd, and I would be honored to earn your vote. But most importantly, I want to say again, your time is very valuable to me. You're here on this beautiful day to hear from two great candidates, and I really appreciate that. And my apologies for not being here at the 4 o'clock starting time. This is an important place. Your time is very valuable to me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share some time with each and every one of you. Hi, Scott.
They have questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just start with a quick one since you mentioned salmon. Is the decline of the fishery so far down that it's beyond repair, or could real political will result in bringing the salmon back? And without the salmon, we're not going to have the orcas and so many other things.
Absolutely. I think that, as I said, making sure that we can protect the resource and preserve the opportunity for future generations to have those experiences. If there was not that opportunity in fishing, that fish opening in '97, I may never have been able to experience the importance of this place to the community. And I think that preserving the resource, to preserve those experiences for our children and grandchildren is paramount. And I think that if we address the issues of harvest that affect harvest, that are water or hydro, they call them, as many people may know, the 4 H's, hydro, hatcheries, and habitat. The Supreme Court just recently ruled over the last month that habitat is directly linked to harvest and must be protected, and that the state shall remove culverts, but most importantly, it set the standard that habitat is crucial to the availability of salmon. So it's not just culverts, it's making sure that the decisions that we make at the state level protect habitat, to preserve what's here, but most importantly, to rebuild the salmon stock. And I think it is attainable, it is achievable, it will take political will, but I do believe in the community, and I think that the will in the community is there. It's just setting policy and enforcing it and abiding by it.
Just on that same, talking about the salmon, I've learned that there's many plastic particles in our ocean that actually extend the Salish Sea all the way to Alaska now, all the, like even in those remote areas. And I feel that plastic particles is a big deal with disease with fish and orcas. And in talking about that, I'm maybe aware of some of our garbage issues and struggles recently in our community. As an isolated community here in Port Roberts, some of our values or situation, because we have such a large percentage of visitors that come as well. When we go to county council, I hear them referring to cities like Bellingham and Vancouver. So I went to Lopez and learned a system about recycling plastics there, and I was really amazed to see their self-haul plastic stations at the Lopez garbage place, where you could choose 5 different places that number 1 plastic went there. The struggles they were having is China wasn't taking their plastics anymore. So they actually just made a deal in Canada to have their plastics go there. But the only reason they would take them was because they were sorted in these separate bins. So they were high quality recyclables. We have a situation here where we don't have that opportunity, and the curbside thing had just gone through, and we just lost our exemption to self-haul. I would like to see a plastics recycling center like Lopez, like another isolated community, happen here. You'll notice we have a garbage can and not a recycling bin here. You'll notice when you drive in, we have a huge garbage bin. When I talked to the service provider about getting a mixed recycling container, he says we weren't allowed because of the rules. I'm asking you for help to improve our situation.
Yeah, I've not visited the Lopez recycling facility, but I have seen some information on it. I think that it's innovative approach, and I think that I could see the value in bringing that to other communities, especially communities like this that are bound by a border, and I could see the value of introducing that here.
To change the focus, which Senate committees are you the most interested in influencing?
The Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, in addition to the, as part of those 4 H's, not just for salmon recovery, but for water certainty for the entire community. I think that the state legislature this last session did a good job of addressing certainty for a very small portion of the water users, and mainly for the, and this would be for the Nooksack River Basin, but I think across the board, statewide, providing certainty for our water users for the future is very important. And being on that committee would be an opportunity to work on water policy. Also, the Telecommunications Committee, or I think that access to broadband internet, increased access to broadband internet is vital, especially for communities like this where there's limited providers. And I believe there's only one provider. I think that there should be increased access across the county in the 42nd to broadband internet. We should be supporting policies like the Dig Once policy to at least lay the infrastructure for conduit for fiber to be laid so that we could, in the near future, begin to bring broadband to more of the community. I think that's absolutely vital. And in addition to that, the Transportation Committee is a committee I'd like to serve on. The introduction to my experience in the state legislature was advocating for road funding for Whatcom County. And I think that the more work that I did on that, the more I could see the need for improved road infrastructure throughout the community to make sure that our families, students, and workers are able to get to and from home safely is important and crucial. But again, as I said, coming in as if elected, coming in as a freshman senator, my experience in the past is you don't always get to pick and choose the committees that you're assigned to. But if I got to choose, those would be the 3.
Thank you.
It seems to me that your expertise is in those areas, and that would be great. But half of the state budget is in education, and there's a big crisis nationally with students not feeling safe, organizing, walking out of classes, trying to get safer schools. The only response that seems to be coming out of Washington, D.C. is that the teachers should be armed. So that would somehow make things safer. And then with teachers nationally organizing and demanding higher wages, better health care, and the Republican response is to lower the requirements to teach and increase charter school funding and school choice school vouchers. What is your position in terms of these education? What needs to be done with education in the state?
I think that things like increasing access to early education, kindergarten and pre-K, making sure that the state puts resources towards that is very crucial. I think that that would help alleviate a lot of the concerns and services that are being provided further on down a person's life journey. I also think that there needs to be a pathway not just to higher education, and I want to say that higher education is great and that we're doing a great job of providing a pipeline or pathway to community college, universities, and higher education, but we also need to be destigmatizing skilled labor trades and providing a pathway for folks to gain access to apprenticeships and services similar to that, because those are good, respectable jobs, and we should be encouraging and building up our students to pick the pathway that they want. As chairman for the tribe, for Lummi, I was the executive of a rural government, and the tribe operates, or it charters a community college. There's a community college with 1,200 students, open to the public, and there are many, at this time of the year, there were many tribal members who were the people, the constituents I was responsible for at the time, would wait in my office and tell me about that they did everything that they were supposed to. They went to school, they went to college, they got a degree, and there was no job waiting for them at the end of their pathway there. And they were upset, which I also learned as executive of a government, it's always your fault, always my fault. It's always my fault regardless of what it is. But they had a point that the pathway that was set in front of them, there wasn't that opportunity for these other opportunities of labor, skilled trades, where I do know of folks and have family members who went through apprenticeships, and they have a job that they respect, a job that provides for their family, and I think that we should be providing more opportunities like that. In addition to the safety at schools, I think that it's extremely important that we have a safe environment to send our students to school, and that nobody should be worrying about their students or their children while they're there, and they should expect that they come home safe and that they learn something new that day. And in terms of gun responsibility, as a hunter, it may have influenced me for a while that I really had no strong position on gun responsibility until the Marysville pill truck incident, where I had a friend who I consider a brother, who is living now down in Tulalip in Marysville, and his brother-in-law lost his life at that event. And in addition to that, at the Las Vegas shooting, we had two close friends who was a survivor, who was shot and survived, and we got the call at 11 o'clock saying that our friend was shot, and stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning to get an update. And that changed me. That absolutely changed me, and I think that there needs to be policy set to make sure that either when our students go out to school, or if our community members go out to do whatever in public, that there needs to be a safe environment, and arming our teachers is not the answer. That's not the solution. Certainly.
In regards to the fisheries, what's your view on these fish farms in the Salish Sea that are raising salmon that are not endemic to our area, raising a threat to our salmon?
Yeah, the Atlantic fish farms that are in state waters, Washington is the only state on the West Coast that permits and allows them. As I said, it was a definite team effort on the Gateway Pacific Terminal, and opposing and stopping and killing the coal project that was proposed at Cherry Point. And for me, that was about a 3-year campaign that the team worked on, actually formulating a plan, putting it forward, and seeing it to fruition. The same team actually was tasked with responding to the Atlantic salmon fish farm at Cypress Island last August. It was about a week before Labor Day, whenever the eclipse was. Oh man, dude. My terrible joke about the fish farm is, how do you compromise a fish pen? You eclipse it. The company at the time blamed the tides from the eclipse that compromised the anchor system and caused hundreds of thousands of fish to spill out into the Salish Sea. As of May, just before Mother's Day this year, there was one caught in the Skagit River. They said that they would not survive and that they would quickly die, but apparently that they're still out there competing with the wild stocks, who and that's an issue and a problem. And through the leadership at the tribe, we were able to quickly clean up as much as we could at the fish pen site. And I think that if we had not done that, the state legislature would have not taken issue and notice of how big of a problem that this is, and they wouldn't have acted this session. And I raised my hands up to them. They voted and approved to phase out the Atlantic fish farms because of the threat that they bring to wild stocks, and also how they compromise the iconic wild salmon of the Pacific Northwest. Sir?
You mentioned working with the state of Washington government as executive of the sovereign nation, it's a First Nation. I know you weren't here, but Vargas presented some history and credentials with working as a city council person in Bellingham, and has presented some endorsements by Washington state legislators, Washington state senators. Do you have any history working with either the state assembly or the state senate? And are you carrying any endorsements from folks you've worked with, organizations you've worked with?
Yeah, from the federal level, Congresswoman Camilla Jayapal, Congresswoman Susan Delbeni. From the state, former 42nd state senator Georgia Gardner. Current state elected officials, Senator John McCoy, Senator Kevin Ranker, Senator Rebecca Saldana, State Senator Steve Hobbs. There's a list of, also I have a distinction from Mothers Demand Action. It was endorsed by the Washington Conservation voters. It was endorsed by my tribe, which was very, very important to me, by the tribal chairman, Jay Julius, a list of other tribal organizations, or tribal governments, sorry, and the politics that between tribes can often be pretty tricky. So I really value the fact that I gained the respect from my peers during my time as tribal chairman to earn their endorsements. And a full list of my endorsements can be found on my website, votetimbaloo.com. A collection of local elected officials, Alicia Rule, councilwoman from City of Blaine, Teresa Taylor from City of Ferndale, and also councilwoman Kate Hansen from Ferndale. But yeah, I've always made it a point to value the relationships between the other partners and governments, and I want to continue that effort, but most importantly, I want to represent the people of the 42nd, the people and families. Yes?
I don't know that there is currently at the state level any interest in the redistricting issue about turning it over to an independent commission, as California has, instead of turning it over to your party or the other party. But if there were such a move to do it with an independent commission, would either of you support that?
Well, I would be open to it.
I would be open to it. Instinctively want to say yes, but I would like to look a little bit more into it. But I wouldn't see major concerns of having an independent commission do that work.
Well, it works pretty well in California.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me that there is a tendency increasingly in this country to say, well, the bad guys did this, and so now we get our turn to do, we get bad guys. And that is disenchanting people. at least on the left.
Can
I
I
think that
bring,
there's a lot of divisiveness permeating throughout the country. I also want to continue my practice of reaching across the aisle, so to speak, to address the issues that the community wants addressed rather than letting them stay stagnant. I think that sort of attitude doesn't get us anywhere, and I think that an independent commission would be right by that work.
can I break in at this point and suggest that we choose the person to answer the question, or you want them both to answer your questions? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you come on up, Pinky, and both of you answer the questions. Good.
Okay.
Yes, you. Yes, you.
You're on, Mark.
Okay, well, so it's actually not a question, but it's sort of maybe food for thought for both of you, for whomever is going to be our next senator. I'm pretty active in community affairs here, and in Point Roberts we like to think that we're completely unique, but in fact there are a lot of unincorporated rural or semi-rural communities that have have some similarities, whether it's on an island or far into the mountains, or a community cut off with a border on one side of it like us. And I've become recently more and more concerned about governance in unincorporated communities such as Point Roberts, but not only Point Roberts. We only have about 1,300 people here. Maybe in the 2020 census we'll break that 1,500 threshold, but even if we did, I think incorporation is just a non-starter for a community of 1,500 people with no oil refinery or big tax base. It's just not feasible. So I think we're destined to remain unincorporated, and we have a lot of problems, and Tim will appreciate this being a council member. We have sort of a lot of problems kind of relating to county council because of the distance, because we don't get the Herald newspaper here in Point Roberts. You can't even buy it here. We just sort of cut off. We do have a community advisory committee which was created by the county, by county council, but it's made up of representatives from various organizations and a couple of representatives appointed by the executive. There's questions about, it's probably the best we can do right now, but there's no provision, there's no mechanism for actually electing these representatives, which would give them a lot more legitimacy. And I don't know if any place in the state of Washington there's any model for doing that, but I think it's something that I would like, and I don't know how much the county could do at its level, unique to one county, or whether this would have to be enabled by state legislation. But I think that there are a lot of unincorporated communities that need a mechanism, and it takes a little money to run elections, to elect their representatives. And those representatives would be purely advisory. They'd have no real legislative authority at all, but it still would make it more relevant and more effective if they really were elected by the community, rather than being sort of appointed or just being a bunch of active people in the community that end up on every committee. So it's food for thought.
Do you have answers to that?
I personally don't know of anybody, of any counties that have unincorporated that do elections, so I've not heard that before. I could kind of look into it, but
I don't think there's any
I
place
have
that's
not
ever done that.
heard that before, so
I also don't know if there's any current model, but what I do acknowledge is the level of commitment that the community members have to advocate for the issues of Point Roberts, and I know that you're not alone with other similar communities, and I could definitely empathize and value that. As a former tribal leader, we're only a few decades into true recognition from the federal government, and I know that the diligence that it takes to work and engage different levels of government to essentially fight for recognition. And I appreciate that, and I recognize that commitment here in Point Roberts and in my short stay as a county council member. And I really respect the community members here for your diligence.
To both, something I'll let Mark follow up on is the TBD funds that we've been collecting as part of the advisory committee. That's one of their charters is to handle that. We've collected about $1 million over, I don't know how many years, and still trying to figure out how to spend it, and got some work towards that actually done. But my question is, Mark and Arthur Reber, actually, on behalf of us, other taxpayers with it, went and hired a lobbyist and talked to our Luann, among others, I guess. And it just kind of went over their heads. Maybe we didn't spend enough money on the lobbyist or whatever. But the thing is, it's a special district. It's not like anything else. And immediately, I guess what Doug Erickson said was we can't change that because that's part of how other gas taxes are taxed and given out. And no, this was a special fund. There's a similar sort of fund at Sumas, but this is a special fund that has its own problems. And what we're hoping to do is widen the charter for what the funds could be used for. Instead of strictly fixing the roads, which the county's admitted they have to pay for that. We're willing to co-pay or help or do things on our own with that money. But widen it a little bit. Like there's doubts whether we could, for example, build a little park, or there's lots of little ideas. They're community oriented. And so I'm wondering if you even know what we're talking about here, and just your question, Mark, or yeah.
Can I just add a little more detail to that? So the Transportation Benefit District comes under one RCW, which has a whole list of transportation improvements that can be funded by that district, but only the border area transportation districts are allowed to impose an excise tax on fuel. And that comes under another RCW, which very narrowly restricts the use of those funds to road maintenance and repair. We tried to get the legislature to liberalize that second RCW to make the two sets of criteria for what funds can be spent on the same. And we actually initially had the support of, at least lip service support, of Doug Erickson and Vincent Vise, and then Vise kind of handed it over to what's her name? Luann. She was new and didn't have her name on very much legislation yet, so they took it to committee, went to both committees in both houses, but then people started raising the specter of the 18th Amendment, which says that fuel taxes can only be spent on road construction. Well, the 18th Amendment says very specifically relates to state taxes, so it doesn't really apply to transportation benefit districts. But they applied the principle, and that's probably why the legislation was written the way it was. The RCW was written that way in the first place, because the principle of the 18th Amendment is that fuel taxes should only be used for road construction. We wanted to use some of our money to fund additional school bus transportation for the kids, so that those kids that stay in Blaine after school for sports or extracurricular, they would have a second school bus run. And we thought that was a good place to start because everybody's in favor of school buses, but it died over the 18th Amendment, which doesn't even legally apply, but in principle would apply. But we wanted that crack in the door because this is a community that has no public transportation, and if we imposed a tax on ourselves on car registration or something like that to fund the Transportation Benefit District, we could use it on public transportation. But we have this money kind of flowing in because we have a lot of gas stations here, and it just would be an ideal thing to be able to use that to fund a little public transportation so people could get to Dillingham and back, or to the airport and back, but they wouldn't let us, wouldn't change the law to allow for that.
That's among other projects that the money could be used for.
Well, just an example of what we did in Bellingham with the TBD funds is it wasn't just roads. We also improved Sunday service out into the county and did other things where we enhanced public transportation
But
throughout.
not with the fuel tax.
No, but with the,
Other
but
sources.
within the TBD funds. So there is opportunity to have flexibility in that. And I heard that you now only have one service that comes on Tuesdays and it's now a taxi service. So you have very limited opportunities for
The WTA is another.
for
sore
transportation
spot.
here, so,
We had a wonderful community van program through the WTA
That's
for
what-
years,
yeah.
where we had volunteer drivers. They provide, it was great. WTA provided the vehicle and the maintenance and the insurance and the registration and all that. We provided the volunteers that organized the bookings, the reservations, the itineraries, and provided the drivers who were trained by WTA, and that got canned for whatever reason by our executive was the mayor of Linden. He voted to can it amongst everybody else. Only Pete Cremens supported continuing that program.
It was liability.
Well,
Or
there's
that's
lots.
what they said.
They said it was administrative burden. They may have said liability. The taxi driver that they contracted to, that comes up once a week, says it was the union. The WTA drivers didn't like the volunteers driving.
so they wanted union drivers.
And they didn't get the additional work because WTA turned around and hired the taxi cab company.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. One is that, there is a high population of seniors here. And a lot of people, some don't drive anymore or have lost the opportunity to drive. And you get isolated. So I think it's pretty darn important that we ensure that there is opportunity for public transportation there.
So around, you got the good long view, which the short view again is, if either one of you get elected, we'd love to see you take on what seems like, the way I heard it, Luann and Doug. Doug said no, and Luann just kind of dropped the ball. She said something about buses, forget it. They didn't even get that there's some finer points about the actual regulation, so they didn't get into it. Yeah, so they didn't get it. So we would hope that you might get it and maybe.
We had the Whatcom County Council of Governments cooperated with us, and they paid for they paid for the lobbyists. They had the lobbyists in Olympia, and they wrote the legislation, and it did go to committee. So I mean, we got that far in the process.
There was a lobbying group against it because they erroneously thought we were asking to increase taxes, and we were not. That was not part of the proposed
You just wanted
change
to
at
spend
all.
your money wisely.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense.
More questions?
What's your position on a state income tax?
So just like the previous point, I think that the issue is making sure that we have the resources to meet the needs of public services, regardless of its education, transportation, mental health services. And I think that there are, in terms of tax policy, things that we could do immediately, such as looking at any corporate tax loopholes that aren't tied to job creation to increase the revenue coming to the state. I think that we definitely do need to retool our tax policy to do what we can to bring in more revenues, and also retool the economy to make sure that we could have the revenues to provide better public services and increase the access to the current level of services that were being provided. I think that in terms of community health, I think that we need increased access to mental health and chemical dependency counseling. I'm really not sure about the level of the need here in Point Roberts. I'd be happy to learn more about that. But I do know that almost everywhere across the country, not just the county or the district, that there is a public health crisis around the opiate epidemic, and that it's affecting every person, every family, and that there are services, and I've seen the services offered by the state provided effectively through a comprehensive wraparound service approach, that people are able to get themselves back up on their feet and be contributing members of society, get their children and parental rights back, which I think is a huge indicator. And I think that it's all tied to the amount of revenues that we have, and also making sure that we provide good services to the community. But retooling our tax policy is going to be a crucial step in that.
We have an incredibly regressive tax system, one of the worst in the country. And there are way too many people that are paying taxes who are on the lower income, and less people paying taxes on the high income. And we need to figure out how to make it way more revenue neutral, so that the people who are earning more are paying more. So like Tim said, yes, we need to close some tax loopholes, but I also think we need to move towards a capital gains tax that so taxes people in a higher income. And I think that if our state moved towards an income tax that was based on what people make, it would give us a way better opportunity, and less people who are making, only making minimum wage shouldn't be paying the brunt of our taxes. And our whole state right now is suffering from that. Our property taxes are too high. We pay so much out of sales taxes. This is not a good way for us to be. And I absolutely think that we need to shift our tax burden around right now.
The thing you need to be very careful about, and Canada's a good example of this. Canada put in the GST, and they promised that they would lower the income tax, the federal income tax. They did not. Once government gets their hands on money, they don't want to let loose of it. So, I mean, it would be great to say, okay, let's tax the rich. And the best way to do that is income tax. First of all, most of the really rich are not earning earned income. So if you want to attack those sources of revenue, that's fine. I would suggest to you, respectfully, that if an income tax goes in, that there be a huge level of income that is exempt, so that the average, at least the average earner in the state, ends up not paying any state income.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with that, and I will say that the only way I would support it is if we are doing way more revenue neutral on our taxes. So that includes lowering things like our property taxes and our sales tax. So that's the only way I would support it, is if we are making sure we're going the other way.
Unfortunately, history has not...
It doesn't support it.
There's ways of making the sales tax less regressive. One of them, of course, is not taxing food items. You can extend that to clothing, sales tax holidays, people buying school supplies, things like that. There's certain things the legislature can do within the existing tax system, possibly increasing the sales tax a little bit, but then exempting more items that hit the poor especially hard.
Luxury tax.
A luxury tax, yeah. That should be exempt.
Okay, I'm involved in a couple of tech companies, and also in trying to bring tech companies here to Point Roberts. I actually had some meetings with some Canadian investors who love the idea of having the business located here in Point Roberts instead of Vancouver. That's a big deal. But also, there's a lot of Seattle escapees, and now we're seeing California escapees. A $200,000 salary in Silicon Valley can be a $100,000 salary here, and a $100,000 salary in Point Roberts for the rest of Whatcom County is a lot of money. So as far as tiering the taxes, one of the big attracting points is come here, the real estate's a little cheaper, and we have good views and good water and good fish, but also your income goes a little farther because you have less personal income tax. So I'd like to see a tier of that somehow in your balance, which I know it's all going to be discussed and put into the hologram, if you will. So just offering that. Thank you.
You had a question down here.
Oh, I'm fairly new to this community, but in Washington State. But I see two different candidates representing Democrats, and only one of you is going to go on. What do each of you plan to do to integrate what the other one could have brought to the table that you don't have? I mean, does the Democratic Party work together to be sure to include, more of the nation's issues? And Pinky has other background things that you don't have. It just seems like there should be a way for you to work, there can be a way for you to work together, and we'd like to see that, because we know that only one of you is going to move on.
Well, I have been a Democrat a long time. I'm very involved in the Whatcom Women Democrats and the Whatcom Democrats, and I have both. I have the Whatcom Women Democrats endorsement, the Young Dems endorsements, the State Young Dems endorsement. So I've been a Democrat a long time. I MC at the picnics. I do all of the things, and I will fully support whoever wins as the Democratic candidate. I do think that we have some skills that are similar. There are some things that are separate, but we must win in the 42nd. There is no reason to have Doug Erickson go back to the state. We absolutely cannot have that happen. So all I ask of you is to make a critical decision in what's important to you in regards to what you vote on the ballot. But as far as Democrats go, I will work very closely, whether it's Tim or I, to ensure that a Democrat wins in the 42nd.
A comment that worked really well in Virginia, was that 2016 or 2017? Anyway, worked really well there, where the governor, the number 2 guy that lost, immediately worked together with the other Democrats so that they would win.
I will not accept us losing the 42nd ever again.
Tim, do you want to
likewise, many times in forums like this or similar group meetings, and also with Pinky, I too share the goal of making sure that we make sure that the progressive values of the 42nd are represented, especially this year. And I will support Pinky if she shall move on. But either way, I want to support the community to make sure that the values of the 42nd are represented at the state Senate level, and that hasn't been done in quite some time. This district has voted in a progressive way time and time again, especially during the presidential elections, and we need to make sure that our community members, our friends, our family members, the people of the 42nd show up, vote, and vote down ballot to make sure that we win the 42nd, because we have consistently in the past, and we need to this year. It's very crucial. Like I said, the divisiveness that's permeating throughout the country is unacceptable, and it's not getting our communities anywhere. And I think that for the time being, we are going to need to rely on our local governments and our state governments to protect our rights. And that is a main motivation of mine, to step up and represent you as a state senator. And if I don't get that opportunity after August 7th, I fully support Pinky in her candidacy. I think she's running a great campaign, and I think that this is the year that we make sure that our values are represented.
I just want to add one point about that, about some of the things that are on the line. For example, there is an opportunity right now that the Supreme Court could appoint a judge who does not support pro-choice. The state of Washington, in our Constitution, we actually we have a law that protects us at the state level that allows women to make their own choices. However, if we lose and there gets to be a Republican majority to the point that they have 60% of the vote, that is something that could be changed. So protecting our choices right now, if that starts to happen at the federal level, what we do here in the state is critically important. So we cannot lose that Democratic seat.
It's not just that particular right. Net neutrality, which the state is now protecting.
Yep.
Various other things that the feds have decided aren't important anymore.
That's right.
The state has stepped in And we need that to continue.
Absolutely.
We have time for about a couple more questions.
I just have a quick, the only way that we can win is getting more Democrats to vote.
That's right.
And I wondered if either group, or I don't even know how the state does it, if you could enlighten me and others on what can be done to make that happen the most.
Get people to the vote.
Voter outreach.
Oh,
Voter
yeah.
outreach.
This,
Volunteer.
tell your neighbor.
So
Get
there's
them to the
there is
polls.
Some statewide.
So there's a couple of things. So obviously, what Tim and I do for us to encourage people to vote is we doorbell. So that's what we do as individual Democrats. But at the state level, so once the primary is over and there's choices, then the state can step in. So the state Democratic Party, the Senate Democratic Caucus, and there'll be organizations like Legal Women Voters. They will all help in regards to getting out the vote and ensuring that people vote in the general election. In the primary, that's pretty much up to Tim and I to get people to vote. So this is what we do to try and encourage you to vote and to get other people to vote. But after this is over, the state and many other organizations will step in to help get out the vote in our entire county. Well, statewide, really, statewide.
How many of you had phone calls from their campaigns? Okay, could I like a show of hands? Not too many.
Emails.
I haven't gotten either, and I've been registered for it.
It's interesting
I
because
got emails.
We get the emails.
you get the, okay, not, if not
Yeah,
phone calls,
nobody-
emails, not many.
I think you got 3 from
And I prefer-
Tim and 4 from.
And point interface is,
It's a respectable amount.
There's a question in the back.
This may be a newer issue coming to Point Roberts that I've been learning recently about homelessness, and I wondered if any of you have worked on the issue and how you felt about the wee houses, the small houses, providing accommodations as long as they have the septic capacity. Any of you worked on homelessness stuff or finding low-income housing for workers here? There's a few that's gotten kicked out for Airbnb, and I'm like, great that they can do Airbnb, but we need workers, and other island issues seem to escalate in that.
During my tenure at the Lummi Tribal Council, 2 sites were actually allocated or set aside for both tiny home being placed on the property, but also opening up existing houses that were on the property for transitional housing that was definitely needed in the community, not just for folks suffering from mental health or chemical dependency issues, but just needing that at whatever stage of life that they're in or they had a setback. And also as a county council member, we are working through a process to hopefully identify property that something like a tiny home village or a temporary encampment could be placed. I think that other communities throughout the state have shown some success with access to something like that, and I think that that's something that could be brought and incorporated here in the 42nd. And it's something that is desperately needed.
I will tell you, I've spent the last 4 years working on homeless issues in regards to what's happening in Whatcom County, and particularly on Bellingham City Council, because a lot of the support programs are in the city of Bellingham. Our point of contact every year is done, and we 1 day a year we count how many people we actually think are homeless in Whatcom County. And right now, that is over 700 people. And the scary part about that is 40% of those are women and children. So in regards to what we can do and the programs we were doing, so on Bellingham, we have an annual budget of about $500 million, and $4.3 million is spent on programs in regards to how we can support our homeless community. And that is mental health programs, that's trying to find housing. We recently, one of the things that we did on City Council was people who are helped through to transitional housing to get off the street and get into housing. They're given sometimes what's called the Section 8 certificate. But then, because housing has become so unaffordable and inaccessible, people were getting denied that housing because of income discrimination. So we actually had to change our laws at the city council to make sure that people were not getting discriminated because of where their income was coming from. So also we've done changes in regards to applications in the city so that people don't get discriminated if they've had a criminal record or if they're applying for a job. So we're trying to remove as many barriers as possible to people actually finding a way to transition. The biggest challenge we have is housing. We have less than 1% vacancy rate in the city of Bellingham. We have no place to house people, and it's hugely challenging. We have over 200 people that are on the street every single day that you see in downtown Bellingham. It causes many challenges on both sides, and because some people don't feel safe, some people don't feel like we're doing enough. There's organizations that have been working like tiny homes. There have been organizations in Bellingham that have been trying to find ways. We changed some of our zoning recently so that we can allow people to maybe place tiny homes, that we can allow different structures. We changed it so that churches, if they wanted to be able to have a tent encampment in their churches, that they would be allowed to do that. So we're working with as many organizations as we possibly can to try and find services. One of the biggest challenges we've had is for the last 2 years, we've been trying to get property that we could build a low barrier shelter that could house 200 people, that would have medical, dental, mental facilities for people to go and get taken care of. And the biggest challenge we have is nobody wants us in their neighborhood. So everybody wants us to help, but nobody wants it in their neighborhood. And so this continuous battle of how we help people and give them the resources we need, but allow people to accept diversity in their neighborhoods or allow the changes that are happening is a huge it's a huge challenge for us to work through as a city, and we have now partnered with the county because we know the city can't solve this, and now there are more and more issues in homelessness all the way throughout the county, and it's spreading everywhere. So we now have decided to partner with the county on finding land for us to have a low barrier shelter, places that people can put tiny homes or different structures or tent structures, or things like showers or bathrooms or storage facilities. So this, I know I sound a little excited, but this for me has been something that that I've learned a lot through the process of what people are willing to do and how people are willing to help and where the resources come from, and also where people are willing to put the money. So also, one of the things that Tim mentioned is mental health. And the fact that a lot of people are on the street because they don't have funding for mental health care is a huge part of this challenge. So there are multiple things that we can do in regards to helping in moving towards solving some of our homeless crisis.
One last question. Do you want to end it? Okay.
I'll defer to anybody else. Go ahead.
Okay, this Lummi Island, Lummi Island, do you have to use septic tanks there?
I actually live on the Lummi Peninsula, separate from Lummi Island, and
the reason I'm asking is that one barrier to putting tiny housing things is it has to have some sewage treatment. Right. We don't have any here, but we've looked into, some of us have looked into a thing that would attack both that problem and also be environmentally a good thing. What it amounts to is it's not just composting, it's a completely natural use of wetlands to treat sewage. And what comes out at the other end is drinkable. Feds won't let you drink it. But you can put it back into the ocean and it's perfectly good water. And it takes land and it takes a setup and it's not cheap to establish. Well, and of course, if you're gonna pipe sewage or pick up sewage from all the places, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into that. Would you be willing to work with us, either one of you, to try to get grants, to try to get this off the ground?
That is an absolutely interesting proposal. I would want to learn more about that, and if you'll find ways to support it, and not just with this issue, but with the issues across the board. I just want to offer and hope for an open line of communication to understand these issues and the kind of incremental steps that it will take to bring them to completion.
Let me top that off with the part of the design is that there's two problems. If you have wetlands, it's hard to put a septic. Even if the wetland is, and I'm the conservation person, is just a tiny puddle in the middle of winter that even herons won't sit in, okay? But there's enough to disturb the ability to do septics, okay? And most of the lots here on Gulf Road are not buildable because of that. So you combine the wetlands, which you can mitigate, all into one wetland with a partial sewage treatment system, and therefore you remove the wetlands from those piddly useless ones into a nice one that it becomes a park and has lots of herons and fish and whatever, and it's really useful and allows you to build more. So and there are evidently one of the Bay Area, Sailor Sea areas that is south of Ferndale, and I can't remember who it was working with the port, okay, to work on such a system, and other people have applied for it and were turned down by the county, some people locally here. So, but it's all doable because they've done it in other places. The famous thing to look up is Arcata, California. Yeah, definitely look it up. Yeah, I've actually been to the water. I've been to the last little cedar weir, redwood in that case, and the water comes out, and I couldn't quite bring myself to drink the water a lot, but I did taste it, and it certainly, I don't know how sick you might get, but it certainly seemed very clean to me. And then it goes into the bay, so it's multiple tiers, and Arcata is a town of 25, no.
We don't know.
Well, it's a university town. It's a decent town.
It's a good sized town.
It's a good sized town. Oh, you're good. So, Arcata, California.
As long as it met environmental protections, the Department of Ecology would be okay with the treatment itself, then I would absolutely be willing to support it. And I think that we need a lot more ideas that are a little bit outside of the box to figure out housing, to figure out accommodating our water and all of those things. So I'm open to new ideas.
Okay, all right.
So may I ask, could we have just like 30 seconds to wrap up each? Would that
Yes,
be okay?
that's why I'm trying to get Mark to stop asking questions.
Good luck with that. You follow us up with questions.
And then they get to wrap up.
All right, well, there may be a really quick answer to this, because maybe Washington, and I should know this, maybe Washington, maybe the legislature has already passed this legislation, but do you know if Washington is participating in this interstate compact, which would essentially get around the electoral college, go into effect if enough states whose combined electoral votes would be determinative of the presidency, that they would pledge to give all of their electoral votes to the national popular vote winner. And if Washington is not already signed on to that, would you work to put Washington into that compact?
So I will tell you, I have not talked to anybody who is advocating for that right now, so I don't know anybody who's involved in that. I would be willing to look at it, but I personally have not heard it.
Yeah, it's just a pledge that your electoral votes will go to the popular winner nationwide.
If enough states agree to it,
Enough states agree.
yeah.
Right.
So Washington wouldn't be giving up its.
No, it wouldn't go into effect unless there were enough states that would guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
Big democratic issue, big.
It is a big deal. Changing the electoral college is a huge
Well, it's a way of doing it without amending the Constitution.
Without amending the Constitution, yeah.
Okay, who's gonna go first?
I can go first if you want. So again, thank you so much for spending your Friday night, and I know there's lots of fun things you could be doing. So this means that you obviously care about our democratic process and you want to make a good decision. Hopefully you've learned some things tonight that can help you with that decision. Just know again that I want to make sure that my door is always open and that everybody's voice gets heard, and that we work together on common interest things and sharing our money and our values and make sure that we have opportunity for public health and safety and mental health, of course, being a big part of that. One of the things that I wanted to say that was brought up in regards to gun responsibility, I will tell you that for many, many years, I've been donating to the Alliance for Gun Responsibility because I think it is fundamental that our children should not be afraid to go to school, whether it's guns or immigration. Our children should feel safe in school. And we also have a huge issue around suicide rates with guns. And these are things that we need to be talking about in our culture, and that also overlays with mental health care. So mental health care is a huge issue for me that I'm advocating for. So a couple things that I just wanted to let you know in regards to endorsements, etc., is that I work with many, many women's organizations. I have been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, by NARAL, the National Organization of Women, the National Women's Political Caucus, and the Win with Women. I'm very much a pro-choice, progressive woman Democrat. And I also work very closely with the trades, and I have been endorsed by the electricians, by the carpenters, by the painters, and by the transportation union, and also by the Walking Women Democrats and the Young Dems. So just know that Point Roberts, I know that you're treated like an island, and that you deserve to have a voice at the table in Whatcom County, and I want to be that for you. So my website is votepinkyvargas.com. The primary is in 25 days, so please vote on August 7th, and I hope I get your vote. Thank you.
Really quick before my closing comments, I did not get to address the Electoral College. I have not heard anyone speak of that yet. I would want more time to look into it. But in general, I really appreciate the bold suggestions for community issues and problems here in Point Roberts. I think that in general, I want to be your candidate and also empower local governments and local communities to be a part of the solution to the community issues. I think that that's a proven way to bring what the community needs and wants and to protect the future of our communities. My life's work, aside from commercial fishing, has been working for the people in public office. And I've stood up for the people time and time again to protect the environment, to help improve our economy. And I now ask for your support to stand up for you, to represent you in the state, to make sure that our community, which is the best place to live in the world, stays exactly that, and also is here preserved for future generations. As a Native candidate, a First Nations person, my grandparents were some of the first Native people recognized with the ability to vote in this country. So being a candidate is a Native candidate, just 2 generations removed from that, is important to me, and I'm honored to be able to have this opportunity to represent our community, represent our people and families, and I commit to you to continuing to stand up for the people of the 42nd. And I hope I can earn your endorsement and vote. And I too encourage you to vote on August 7th and November 6th to make sure that our progressive values are represented.
Thank you all for coming today. I counted 32 people. That's quite a number to get out on a Friday afternoon in Point Roberts. So you have been blessed.
I'm impressed.
And go and vote. And you get your ballots on the 25th of July, I think.
They mail on the July 18th. You'll probably have them about the 20th, maybe Monday, so maybe the 22nd. So
vote.
Vote.
And